Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be taking a look at something a little bit different on my channel. Not exactly RC related, but this is something pretty cool because I like my gadgets and tech stuff. This is a dash cam. I've actually got several of these I'm going to be reviewing on my channel sometime over the next month or so because I really like stuff like this. This is the SD310 by Surfola. This is available on Amazon. There's a lot of these on Amazon, and you have to kind of weed through to find out ones that really you like, and this one I really did like a lot. Now, if you're not familiar with what a dash cam is a camera, sort of like an action camera, that you place in your car, and some action cameras have those capabilities like this, to record when the car starts up and when it turns off. And it records everything while you're driving in segmented clips so that you can find where you need to look at a file. And it's really vital for insurance reasons, or if you just see something really crazy while you're driving that you want to be able to go back and look at. But really insurance reasons. If you're in an accident and someone cuts out in front of you and you hit them, you've got footage to prove, hey, it wasn't my fault, because insurance just has to go by people's testimony, and it's not uncommon for them to end up telling you were at fault and you really weren't. So this is really important, and these are not expensive. Some of them are, but these ones like this is somewhere in the $40 range, I think it was. I mean, it was not a lot for this. And this has a 1440p front camera and a 720p rear camera. Now, that's a real important thing to remember. Most of these dash cams, especially at this price range, come with just a front camera, which that's usually what you need. But you know what? If you have one in the rear window and somebody rear ends you because you stopped for a deer in the road or something and they weren't paying attention, you got proof that, hey, that was the front camera caught the deer and the rear camera caught the guy slamming into your rear end. That's real important. So it's got a 720p rear camera. So the rear camera is not real high resolution, but since the rear is not as important, that ought to not be a real big deal. As long as it doesn't have to be that great a quality, it can still show the accident and when it occurred. But 1440p, that's a step up from 1080p. That is going up to when many people game at 1440p on their computers. That's like in between 1080p and 4K resolution. So not a whole lot else. That's pretty much it, but who cares about the box? We're more interested in what's inside, right? So let's go ahead and get it out of here. Let's see, I had this open the other day, but I want to make sure that I'm not going to sit here for a year trying to open this up. And that's how it folds open once you get that tab pulled out. And let's just pull this down and see. I think it just folds out. And here's your dash camera instruction manual and a car recorder a user manual. Again, both SD310. And here's your camera and the other boxes with your cables, because you're going to need the camera in the rear. Depending on the size of your car, that's a lot of extra cable you got to run back there. So you're going to have to run it along the baseboard or even at the top, the ceiling of your car or something. But it's going to, you got to hide it so that not everybody. You may not want to use the rear camera, but you have that option. You don't have to use the rear camera, so it's up to you. But you can certainly do that. So let's take a look at the camera, and then we'll open these boxes and see what's all inside of those. And then we'll get this thing outside and take it for a test drive in one of my vehicles and get some sample footage. That's what we want to see. How does the camera look? Does it look decent? It doesn't have to be perfect, but does it look good? All that good stuff. So here is the camera. Now this is not a touch screen. We do need to pull these protective pieces off of the camera. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those off right now. So now the camera is not going to look foggy or anything. And then here is that protective piece on the rear too. Now there is a built-in battery, I believe, on these, but they're not going to run very long on that. That's why you always need to power it off of the lighter or USB inside the car. We'll see what cables this comes with. But I believe it will work for a short period of time off of the internal battery. That's in case you lose power or it needs to come on before right at the beginning or something, whenever your car powers up and it's getting that signal that it needs to turn on. So you've got a micro USB here, and that is for the rear camera that plugs in there. That cable will run out and go to the rear. Then you have, looks like a mini USB. So I have to see, that may be for plugging this in. That could be for the power. I'm not exactly sure. We'll have to see what it says. You got some buttons here on the side. It looks like you got a power button here, and you got an OK and some other ones. This is probably for navigating the menus on the camera. And on this side, you've got, this is probably your navigation, your up and down, and maybe a select button or something. And this is your micro micro SD card slot. Now this does not come with a micro SD card, but you need to provide one. I would go with a class 10 just because it's doing 1440p, and I believe it's doing it only at 30 frames per second, which is fine. It's just you're not going to get great slow motion footage if you wanted to watch an accident in slow motion at 30 frames per second. But those are dirt cheap, so that should not be a problem at all. Let's see if I press the power button here, does it actually power up? Got blue light, and there we go, with the Surfola branding. And you can go through here, and you'll probably, let's see if does the OK work on this. If I select English, yes. It's going to want you to put the date in here. So the date right now is showing, this could be in the reverse format, so I'm not going to go any farther. This could be that is saying April 11th, or it could be November 4th. And we'll have to see. Most countries use the reversed format compared to what we use here in the United States. So I'm not going to fiddle with that anymore right at the moment. Well, I guess I could, because we probably should look at the menus. I just was kind of, I did the power, I think. Let's go ahead and press OK. See, that's just let me go through the menu. You want to delete all data. Let's use the, we'll go to confirm. Let's see if we can go down, and then OK. And it says, of course, please insert an SD card. Now you may see some flickering there. I do see it here too, but it'll probably be really noticeable here on my camera recording it because of the frame rate differences and such. Now you get your video. This is a loop recording. It says 3. We'll have to see that in the settings. That may be something where it's like doing 3-minute clips. This is telling me an SD card's in it. I believe this may be some sort of the gyro thing. We'll have to see again. The gyro is basically used if you have an accident. It detects the crash and it locks the file so you don't overwrite the file. You know, because it will continue recording. And if you have a small memory card, it wouldn't take too long for a file to get overwritten again. If you didn't pull that file off in time, oh, you've lost it. It's been written over, and you don't have it for insurance reasons. There's a mic, and of course this is saying your SD card is not inserted, and it says wide dynamic range, and it's saying, you know, it's turning off because the battery is low. 2K resolution, which is similar to 1440p. Either the battery was low or it's just doing that because it hasn't been used. So I'm not going to get too far into the menus because basically this thing should be pretty close to going out of the box, and it's not so easy to navigate this while you're trying to film a video. It can get bulky here, moving around trying to show you guys the different menus on this little camera. But it should be ready to go when it has a power source, an SD card inserted, and you really shouldn't have to mess with much. The resolution should be pretty much set, all that stuff, and it should start recording as soon as the car turns on. Now, some will turn on and record the moment it gets power. Some could use the gyro and not record until it senses the car moving. So it'll probably just use the power, but it's possible that it may power on and then actually not record until it senses a movement. As far as I know, the gyro is just being used to determine a crash. Let's go ahead and pull out the other boxes in here. So let's see what this one shows, the cables, and this is another cable. So this one is, one of them I can see is the power source. So let's go ahead and see how we open this up. Here's a little, that's the mini USB. There is a little pin. It almost looks like something you'd use for a pulling a SIM card tray on a phone. That may be to do like a reset on the camera if it would lock up. There may be a little pinhole on this somewhere. I'd have to, you know, look a lot more close. Yeah, that's what that is. There's a reset here. And it may be hard to see in the video. That's going to be to poke that in and reset the camera if it froze. The one next to it's the little mic. I wouldn't expect the sound to be too good on this. Sound should not be too important for a video, but it's nice if you have a little sound to it. Here is your power cable. So it has the option of going into the lighter. Most cars nowadays have this, but they're not really lighters. They're just a power source. And that is that mini USB. That's pretty long. You want a long cable because not everybody's lighter plug in there is super close to where you're going to mount it on the windshield. And here is your suction cup. So this is going to attach to the camera up top here, and then you can attach this whole deal to your dashboard, where, excuse me, your windshield, not your dashboard, above your dashboard and your windshield, where you actually want to put it. You want to center it somewhere below your rear view mirror. It doesn't have to be, so you don't want super low, it'll obstruct your view, that'd be bad. Up somewhere behind, just below, maybe just to the right and down a little bit from your rear view mirror. And it should have a pretty good wide angle lens that's going to get everything in the field of view, so it doesn't have to be centered perfectly. And we got some sort of I'm not exactly sure again what that is. We have to look at the instruction manual. It should have like a parts list, and it should tell us what all the stuff is. So I'm unboxing this with you guys, so I've not used this obviously, so some things I may say I seem a little unfamiliar because I got to figure it out too. I'm opening this up just like if you guys did. And here is that little 720p rear camera. Uses some adhesive, so it's going to go up into your window to look out the rear. We'll have to see, because the way this is set up, we'll have to see how that works, because I don't, with this being adhesive, I'd hope to God this doesn't go on the outside of your window. That would be weird, because you know, if you're putting it on the inside your window, it'd be pointing towards the back of your head, the back of your head. So we have to look and see how that actually works to set that up, because I wouldn't want this to be outside to looking out rear, because then it'd be very difficult to get this wire outside of the car. So we'll take that little bit off this here just so we don't forget. This is a little cube cam, very similar to the ones you see. Many people in the RC world use ones like this to record stuff. It's similar to that. It's not going to be real high quality, but it ought to be good enough to at least get some rear, you know, footage. And this one uses that mini USB into it. So we'll have to take a look. I just don't know on this how this is going to attach. I'm trying to visualize this myself, because if you got your rear window like this, it's going to point up or it's going to point towards you. So how are we going to get this to point rear? That almost makes me think it'd have to go on the outside window, which I hadn't really thought about this. And if that's the case, again, how are you going to get that out there? Now you can see it does unplug here, it appears. So that's good. If you're running it back, you don't have to worry about snaking the camera through. You pull it back to where you want it, then you plug the camera in. So it could be a deal where you take this thing out into your trunk and then come up behind the hinges and run it up to your rear window. If that's the case, that's not exactly ideal. Having it mounted inside the rear window would be fine, and you're not exposing the camera to the elements. So we'll have to look at instructions more closely. I may very well be wrong. I'm just having a hard time visualizing how that would actually work. So here it tells you how to put the SD card in and how you mount it into the front of the car, and then a little diagram with the menus and how you plug in the power source, and it's use a crowbar to hide the rear camera cable. So this is to help tuck the cable in along the window, and it shows it going either on my license plate or up here. So I'm thinking they are suggesting that you connect the camera outside of the car. You run it either along the headboard, the top here, down and to the rear right here, or take it down along and tuck it underneath along the trim of the door, up and around into the trunk by the license plate. So we'll have to look more closely, because I wasn't really expecting that. I just hadn't put much thought into it, because I really don't want, you know, I really would rather not have a camera on the outside of the car, because the outside elements are being exposed to it, and someone could come along and just rip the camera off your car if they wanted to. Not that it has a lot of value, but to mess up your whole system. So, you know, that's not ideal. So it might be a deal where we might want to try to figure out a way, how could you install this inside of your car and actually have, you know, something that it could, you know, sit like this in your window, and it has adhesive, and you could put this into the middle of the bracket and have it aiming out your back window, because I really don't want this outside. But I'll have to figure out how I can get this snaked through the rear window and get it into the car. That's the problem, because you don't want a wire hanging around the outside of your car. So it's certainly doable. It's just a little more legwork than I assumed. But obviously for this video, I want to have it mounted in the rear somehow for sample footage. Even if I don't want to use the rear camera, you guys want to see it, because what it does is, you know, I have the main screen here, and I believe it I have like a picture-in-picture where it shows the rear as well. Though it may be a deal where you have to switch between the screens. So I thought it had like a picture-in-picture, but that could just be the way it was presented in the YouTube video. And then here's more instructions on actual use of the dash cam. Some statistics and stats and specs. How to get to the menus and all the stuff that I was telling you about when we first started it up. And that's pretty much it. Then it goes to Chinese. So that's sort of everything on this guy. And again, I don't want to dwell on this, but you know, when I looked at the pictures of this, and I didn't actually have the box, I really thought that this was something I could mount on the inside window. And the more I'm seeing this, I'm trying to think if I had this, I wonder if that would work. Now, if I do it like that, it's going to, the glass is going to bump into this. Now if you put it like that into the window, you're going to be filming down at the behind the back seat. So it seems to me like the only way this is going to work on your rear window is mounted on the outside of your car. And again, that's really not ideal. So I have to think that over and figure out if there's a way I can at least rig this up without having to put it outside of my car. Alright guys, real quick, before I get out to the sample footage from the car, I wanted to actually go over that menus a little better, because I didn't do that real good in the unboxing I was just doing, because that was more just me getting familiar with the dash cam, just as if you guys would be just opening it up. Now I've had a chance to actually review it a little more closely. I think it'd be good to go over those menus with you guys in case you might have any questions about it, because I think that's important. I don't want to skim over that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to power on the dash cam. And now I've got an SD card in here inserted inside. I have a 32 gig. I've already formatted it within the dash cam. I've set the date and everything. So it should be good to go now. So what I want to do again, I'm going to go over the OSD stuff again really quickly. I did that a while ago, but let's just do it again to make sure that everything is clear. And then I'll go over the menus, and then we'll get outside and for the sample footage. So you get your video mode. You can also switch out the photo, so we're in video. There's a timer here. It's going to be kind of hard to see with the glare. This is your 3-minute loop record, which I believe I said that earlier correctly. Let's get this a little bit closer to the camera and make sure that we're focused in. And then you've got your exposure setting here. This is your gravity sensor, so if you have an accident, it detects that and locks the video file. You got your date and time and timer down here. We're in 2K, which is your 1440p video. Wide dynamic range is on, your mic is on, SD card in, and the battery meter shows the battery is full. There is a built-in battery on this they can operate on for a while, but you always want to keep it plugged into the mini USB at the top here, because you're not going to be able to run very long and record very long off the built-in LiPo battery. On the side, again, we've got these your up and down buttons and your mode button here in the middle, and then again we got the OK. And you've got the power button here, and a lock button here, and a mode button here. So there's several different, the mode button right here just is very basic. Just takes you between photo and video. And then the button over here is I called mode, is actually the one that lets you bring up the menus. So it's like the menu button. So let's go ahead and go into that. So I'm going to press that button on the side here. And now we brought up the menu. And the first one here is resolution. To get into that, you're going to press OK. And you see 2K or 720p for the front camera. The back is always 720p. This is just for the front camera. So if you wanted to switch to 720p, you could get a lot more video onto the SD card, because 720p video files are going to be much smaller in size. So if you have a smaller card, or you don't have to mess with, you know, basically you don't have to mess with a bunch of large video files, you could switch it to 720p, but be mindful you're going to have much lower quality video. Here's your loop recording here, so you go down to that, and that you just set to how long, or you can turn it off. You want to do loop recording, so you end up with a bunch of small files, and then the SD card will continue to record over those, and it shouldn't fill up the card. It'll go back and start recording over the files at the beginning, but it will make these small video clips right now set to 3 minutes. And then you go down again, you got the display mode, and that is picture-in-picture, split screen, front camera, and rear camera. Picture-in-picture will have a small box here that will show the rear camera, and then the rest of the screen will be the front camera. Split screen is exactly what it says. You'll have half screen's the front, half the back, or you can just show the front, or you can just show the rear camera if you wanted to, which would be a bit odd, but you could do it. Wide dynamic range will just be on and off. No reason to show you that. Exposure is going to be going between -3 to +3 exposure. You probably don't want to mess with that, but if you live in a if you live up in the Arctic Circle or someplace up there where it's this time of year it's always dark, or very close to being dark all the time, you might want to bump exposure up to +3 so you can bring in more light. Motion detection, that will, I believe, will start recording it when it senses motion in the car using the gyro. That's that's off by default, probably because that may not be foolproof. It says it senses motion, so I would leave that off and let it it'll start recording whenever the camera powers up. The next one is going to believe is your audio, and that's just if you want to use a mic or not, and by default that is on. Your timestamp for your date and time, which is important for insurance claims, so make sure you do get that set correctly. That way you can get the exact moment that it happens. Your gravity sensor again is using that for the motion in there, so you can turn that off, low, medium, or high. Right now it's set to low, so if there's an accident, it's not super sensitive, so you wouldn't lock your file if you just barely bumped the camera. High would be very sensitive, and it would lock the file over any small vibration, which you could do just by someone slamming a car door too hard. So I would not set that any higher. And let's go down here again. Parking guard, that appears to be something where it will start recording if it detects some motion, like when the car's parked and it's turned off. That probably is using the built-in battery. It's like sort of like an alarm system, and it can only record what the cameras can see, but I don't know how well it's going to work, because I would think it would have to be a decent amount of vibrations with the car to set that into place, and I would think thunder from a storm and stuff could set it, give it a false alarm, a false positive. So that is also turned off by default, and it's something I'd have to fiddle around with to see if it's something you want to mess with. License plate mode, I have this off right now, but it was probably a good idea to turn this on. Then you put your license plate, and it will appear on the screen while you're recording, while you're driving around. But I believe it'll also timestamp that in a sense. I believe it will put that onto the video file. So then you have not only your date and time, but you can link this, hey, this is your car, insurance, and see that's your license plate. So that's my understanding, at least. We'll have to confirm that. I'm going to probably try to set that up before I do the video, and we'll see if that actually, well, take that back. I probably won't do that, but I need to actually make sure that's what it is, because I don't want my license plate to be visible in the video, and otherwise I have to blur it out for the whole video, and I might do that. We'll have to see. But anyway, that's what that is. That just is an extra layer of identification to you. That's what that is. So that's something I would recommend turning on and put your license plate in, but obviously for the sake of privacy, I'm not going to do that in this video. Then if you press, we're back to the main beginning of the menu at resolution. You press that again, and now you got your date, time. So you want to set that, your screensaver. Now what I would do there is I have it set to off. What that's doing is how long before you want the screen to go to sleep. And I like seeing the camera working, and since you're being powered by your cable, it really shouldn't matter. You're not going to run the battery down per se. Now if you're running off the battery, you want this thing going to sleep really quickly, which is the shortest as 1 minute. But I have it off because I like seeing the screen. Then your auto power off, that's if it's not recording video, how long before the camera will shut itself off. It doesn't appear to matter if it's plugged in or not. It will still power off. So I think if it's not recording, it will just shut itself off because there's no reason to sit there with it on. So I turn that off right now, especially for testing. I don't want it to accidentally shut off on me for any reason. And then your frequency is 50 or 60 hertz for, you know, like PAL and NTSC. That shouldn't really matter. Your beep sounds, your startup sound for the camera, which language you're going to use, to format the SD card, which it told me when I put it powered on I needed to format it. You go in here and format it, and then the card is ready to start working with the dash cam. And your default settings, which is if you mess up the settings, you can't figure out how you're doing it, just to let you reset it back to the default settings on the camera. Which, you know, that's always a nice setting to have. You got to reset everything. And your firmware version, which, you know, they may have a firmware update for this. I'd have to look and see, but everything seems to be working just fine right now the way it is, so I wouldn't worry about that. Yeah, so now we've got the menus covered. So I didn't get a chance to really go over those earlier, and I said I would like to, but you know, there's a lot to cover at the time during the unboxing. All right, now we've got everything covered. Now I feel better about this. So let's go on and move along now to some sample footage of the rear and especially front camera. And I'll probably talk while I'm driving so you guys get a little idea on the mic. I'm not going to boost the audio so we can see just how good. I expect it's going to be very low, but you should be at least able to hear the mic is what I'm hoping. You know, get a few minutes of sample footage driving around, and then we'll end this video. So thanks a lot, guys. Be right back. Alright guys, so I'm testing out the dash cam now. Let's see how well the microphone works. I don't know how well it's going to work. It's got a little bitty microphone built in here. So this is going to get a lot lower, I'm sure, than my powered mic I was using in the table view. I'm not going to boost this so that way you guys can hear the real quality. If I boost it up. Alright guys, that wraps up the review of the Surfola 310 1440p / 720p rear dash cam. If you enjoyed this review and you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I mostly do RC reviews, you know, RC cars, RC boats, RC trucks, tanks sometimes, and I do a lot of drones. I used to be RD's drone reviews, but drone stuff is sort of puddled out a little bit, petered out with the toy stuff, and there's a lot more restrictions and regulations on them now that I've moved towards doing all RC. So if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I'll be doing some more stuff like this, but not a lot, but from time to time, stuff like this. Like I said, I got the 810 coming up. And while you're at it, click that bell that notifies you every time that I do upload a new video. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.
The power of the dark side.